This is Gemara and Gittin Daf Ayin Dalid, and we're holding on Ayin Gimel Amid Beis, approximately 7 lines from the bottom at the 2 dots, which the Gemara continues discussing the case in the Mishnah that we have some limbo days. Mahi ba'oisar hayamim, what is she in between the days in which the get is gained, the mehayim, until we see whether the condition is fulfilled. Rav Yehuda Omer in the Mishnah Yishiz Chol Devarel, Rav Yesi Omer Migureshes Ve'ina Migureshes. So says the Gemara Tana, we learned in the Mishnah Obulvad Sheyamos, and provided that he dies, Ulchimayis, and when he dies, have a gita. That's when there's a get. Asks the Gemara V'Kayim Lan Dein Get Lachar Misa. But we learned there's no get Lachar Misa. So why in this case would there potentially be a get? Amar Rabba, as we explained, excuse me, we didn't explain. This is the first attempt. Says Rabba, the reason why it works, it's a case is when he said the get should be chal, the last moment that he's in the world. That last moment, that's when the get is chal. Says the Gemara further, Tanu Rabba, on 2 lines on the bottom, I can give them a base. Yomim Shebin in the days in between Balazaikum Ziyasel. The husband, it merits her findings, Ubamaisi Adel, and her earnings. Bavarsi Darani could annul her vows, Viyarsha, and he inherits her in general, Umetamela. And if he's a Kayin, they have a din that they're married, that he's allowed to become Tameh to her. Klala Shaldavar, says the Gemara on the top of Ayin Dalinam Beis, they're considered to be fully married. Says the Gemara, Elo, there's one detail that they're not fully married. What's the one detail? Says the Gemara, they don't need a second subsequent get. There was a get, and when it kicks in Divrei Rav Yehuda. Rabbi Meir Omer, Bilasai Tuluya. The bia, the fact that they're living together is Tuluya, is hanging literally. Now what exactly that means, we'll see in a moment. Rav Yosi Omer, 3 lines down, Ayin Dalam and Aleph, Bilasai Safek. Okay, I guess it was, the share is going well. They turned off the water. Hopefully you can hear me a little bit better now. I apologize. Bilasai Safek, says Rav Yosi, the bia is a Safek. Now what's the difference between Bilasai Tuluya and Bilasai Safek is a very good question, which the Gemara is going to get to in a moment. Also a terminology similar to Safek. They have to eventually die. Says the Gemara, let's begin. What says the Rameir Rav Yaisi? Rameir said Bilasa Tzlir. It says Bilasa Safek. Both of them seemingly indicating that at some level there is a get. What is the chilik? Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yechon Asham Taloi Ikabeinayu. Do you have to bring an Asham Tali? According to Rameir, no, the Rameir Loi Maisi Asham Tali, Rav Yaisi Maisi Asham Tali. Continues the Gemara, what's the next sheet? Says the Gemara, Hainu Rav Yaisi. So we thought Rameir is Rav Yaisi. We've explained the fine nuance of a difference, but now says the Gemara, but the Chachamim are Rav Yaisi. Explains the Gemara, Ikebeinayu dir Rav Zera. The case of Rav Zera is different. The Amar Rav Zera, Amar Rabba Rav Yirmiyah, Amar Shmuel, Kol Makom Sha'amru Chacham Migreshin Migureshes, Baila Chayev Bimzoy Noisel. The difference is going to be that any time we find this lashon of a Safek Gerushin, the halacha is that in the interim the husband has an obligation to support the wife. So that's going to be the 4 different shitas. Rav Yehuda, they're fully married. Rameir, Tuluya, Rav Yosi, it's a Safek. The difference in those 2 opinions is the Asham Tali and the Chachamim, Migreshes, Veinu Migreshes, explains the Gemara that the husband still has to support her. We continue with the Mishnah, he gives her a get. With one condition, you got to give me $200. What's the halacha? Harezi Migreshes. But of course she has to give it. But if he says if he says you are divorced, we have to pay within 30 days, what's halacha? If she gives him the cash within 30 days like he stipulated, Migureshes. There's a story in Sidon with a person that said to his wife, It's talisi. Someone gave his wife a get with the condition that she gives to him it's talisi, the coat. Va'avda is talisai, and she lost his coat. So seemingly a first cousin to the din of the Mishnah, whether you have to actually give the item itself, whether you actually have to give the payment, says the Mishnah, machlaikas, with regard to giving a physical item. Rashbag is adding on a story, how this story fits with the rest of the Mishnah, where, of course, the Gemara is going to ask, but Rashbag adds on that if he told her to give him a specific item, they are divorced. If she gives that item, if she loses it, then the Chachamim allowed her to give the payment, the value of that item. So says the Gemara, My Vesitoin. Let's deal with the first part of the Mishnah. He gave her again Almanasha, she gave $200. Says the Mishnah, they're divorced, but she has to give. What does it mean she has to give? Explains the Gemara. We have a good old-fashioned Rav Huna, Rav Yehuda machlekes. Rav Huna Amar v'chi titin, that she has to give it. Rav Yehuda Amar lichesh titin, when she gives it. Of course, to find nuance of difference in these two opinions, according to Rav Yehuda, lichesh titin means that the get is going to kick in when she gives it, whereas according to Rav Huna, it's going to be lima freya. V'hu titin, you have to give it. When you give it, retroactively it works. According to Rav Yehuda, no, lichashatidin, when you give it, that's when it kicks in. My beinayu, says the Gemara, what's the difference in these two opinions? Beinayu, shenit kara haget oisha avad, that the get was ripped up or lost. Again, we can understand this very simply. Rav Yehuda, according to Rav Huna, v'hu titain, ein etzrichay menu get sheini, that you have to give it and then it's chal lemafreya, then it goes backwards. You don't need another get. Who cares that the paper is lost? It's like a tanai. Once you fulfill it, it goes back to point number one. Rav Yehuda Amar lichashatiti. No, when you give it, that's when it's going to be chal. Therefore, it's richaman get changed another get, because at the moment that he gives it to her, their paper is not extant anymore. So machlekes Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda, how we learn the din of the Mishnah, in which she is obligated to pay for the get when he made such a tanai. Says the Gemara, we have the same machlaikas, or I say similar, but in reality the same machlaikas with regard to kedushin kiagam. The Gittin is learned to the Mishnah. He says, here you are married in kedushin, I give you $200. What's the halacha? She is married and v'yitain. He has to give her the money. Ve'etmar, we learned on this Mishnah in Kedusha, my v'yitain, Rav Huna Amar v'yitain. When he gives it, it works retroactively. Rav Yehuda Amar lichshayitain. No, when you give it at that moment, it is chal. My beinayu, what's the difference? If she accepted from someone else, Rav Yehuda Amar v'yitain. Tanai ba'amu, it's a tanai, but kaim tanai v'azol. And when you kaim the tanai, of course, retroactively it's going to work. Rav Yehuda Amar no lichshayitain l'chiyav lav u'da v'kedushin ashda. So the exact same case that we learned by us by Gittin has been said over there by Kedushin. And any time we have the same case stated two times, of course, what's the question? Question is, why do we have to say it two times? So explains the Gemara, Sricha. We indeed needed to say it twice. I would have thought that's where Rav Huna says his din vuyitin misham delikaraivakasi. You're coming to get married. Aval gabi gerishin, and there goes the water again. I apologize. Aval gabi gerishin, the rachaikakasi. You come to distance yourself. Ema moidei Rav Yehuda. Maybe he admits to Rav Yehuda. That's going to be only apply when it's given because he's not embarrassed to ask her for the money. They're getting divorced. Whereas she might be embarrassed to ask for the money. Maybe he's that it's only chal when it's actually given. On the last narrow line, I would have thought Rav Yehuda. That's Rav Yehuda says it's din that when you give it applies. Like we just said, he's embarrassed to ask. Come to distance himself. On the fourth medium-sized line, that's what we need. Both of these cases, the Gemara speaks out all the different studim. Machlekes Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda applies in both scenarios. Continues the Gemara. Okay, now that we have down pat how to explain the word in the Mishnah when you have to actually give the cash, Meisvei asked the Gemara. Ariza Gittin when asked, Shatitni li Masayim says, here's your get and condition to give me $200. V'afal bishan is gari get a shavat. Says the Rai. So migarashes. Seemingly even without the paper, you're still migarashes. A clear eye. Olacher lo tinas. You can't marry someone else. Shatitin. Voitan another brace. Ariza Gittin when Shatitni li Masayim says umeis. Naslein is a kugliyam lo nesta is a kugliyam or Shavai Goimer. So says the Gemara, what's the machlekes Shimon Gamliel and Tanakamar? Can lo pligi of Shimon Gamliel? Elo demar savar leave lo liyarshe mar savar li afil yarshe. Says the Gemara, it's a sidebar machlekes. When you pay up, is it only to the person himself or is it to even the yarshim? That's what the machleken is going to be. Excuse me. Exactly. Everyone agrees that it's a condition, and when it's fulfilled, it goes back to the first moment. Tiyofta de Rav Yehuda says the Gemara, indeed a kasha on Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda responds, Ha mani Rabbi, Amar Ravuna, Amar Rabbi, Kol Amar. Especially the side of Ravuna of Rabbi and the Rabbanan. That's the reason why in this case it's going to work. Rabbi and Ravuna, Upligi Rabbanan Alei, and the Rabbanan disagree with this din on the first very wide line. Vanodami Kirabanan, Vamar Avzir, Kivina Bivavel, Amrinan Ha, the Amar Ravuna, Rabbi Kolamar, Vanas Kim Akshav Dami, Upligi Rabbanan Alei. The Rabbanan do argue. Kisa Ligan Lashke, when he left, the Ravasi, the Yosef Kam Rishmei, the Rav Yochanan, Akol Moed, Mamanas Ke Oimer Akshav Dami. So where's the machlekes? We know there's machlekes somewhere. Elam. So that's going to be the case which is going to be contested, says the Gemara. Ve'hatanya, and as the top Rashi speaks out, this ve'hatanya is going to be a raya. If someone says they get shvichal today and after I die, Rabbi Yomer, no, because they get Rabbi Yehuda, Almanas, Pligi, according to Yehuda that they argue by Almanas, Adam of the Gabayim, Lachar Misa, left the Almanas. Why does it say Dafka this machlekes? Why don't we just argue in the case of Me'ayim? Says the Gemara, you know why? This teaches the Kayach of Rabbi. So ask the Gemara that we always have, Lifku, Almanas, Liachot, Rabbanon. Why do you bring out the Chiddush of the Rabbanon? On that, ask the Gemara, Kayach the Atira Adifle. It's always better if we have an explicit Raya L'Kula. And obviously, as everyone understands by now, Kayach the Atira Adifle, the reason is because it's more difficult to be able to make of course, not just that it's a Kula, so of course we have it. If someone says the condition that the cash has to be given within 30 days, says the Gemara, Pshita, what's the chiddush of this case? So explains the Gemara, Ma'udatema, I would have thought, Ma'udatema kpeda lav kpeda. I would have thought that it's not a real kpeda, even though we said it. Lazar is a cost, he's just coming to Mizari, he's just coming to urge him to do it. Kamash Malan, that it's actually a real kpeda. Amar Ashbag Ma'isa B'Sid, and the Mishnah continued quoting a story with Rishim Gamliel B'Tzidain. Says the Gemara, Ma'antana, the Gadani Ma'isa, who is this Tana? As we mentioned, we read the Mishnah, this is almost straight out of left field, this din of Rav Shimon and Gamliel. Explains the Gemara classically. 11 lines down, the first one line is Chasurei Mechsara. Chasurei Mechsara v'achi Gadani im Amar Lam and Ashtenali, it's still easy. If he said to our condition, give me a coat, Vav, that's a Lisa, and he loses the coat. It's the Lisa, Davka Kamarla. Tanakama holds, he said, you got to give the coat, you don't give the coat, there's no gerushin. Comes along Rashbag, Rishim and Gamli Aloimer, Titan lo yestameo. No! Even though he said a coat, you could give the value. Now the story makes a lot of sense. It's years you're getting that you give me my coat. And she lost it. So the story is proving his own opinion. Ravasi asks the following shayla from Rav Yochanan. If someone says, here's your get, on condition you give me 200 zos, and then he says, you know what? I forgive the money. Mau. What is the din? Now the Gemara says, which can be anticipated, there are two different ways of understanding the shayla of the Gemara. Tibai l'Rabbanan, Tibai l'Rashbag. Tibai l'Rabban Akanu Kam Rabban also Madluach l'Gabha. The Rabban only said Dafka the coat if he wasn't Meichelit. Avalacha Kam l'Mechilacha. But over here he said he's Meichelit. Oidelma, or perhaps the exact opposite extreme. Afilu Rashbag l'Kamar. Ella the Kama Faisal le bidami. Even Rav Shimon Gamliel only said the din if he actually is Mefaiser. Avali Gamri, but to be Meichelit, loy Amar le, he did not, loy, it would not work. So what is the din, the Shaila of the Gemara that Ravasi asked from Rav Yechanan? Can someone be Meichel the money that he made conditional on the get? Amar le, he responds, Einoi Migureshes. Lamaisa, you didn't pay. Being Meichel the Chayiv does not work. Esvei asks the Gemara, Ha'imr lechavei roi koina magamar nedarim that we learned. Someone says to his friend, I'm making a neder, sha'ata neneli, you cannot get benefit from me. If if you don't give my son a cord's worth of wheat, and 2 barrels of wine. Rameir says Rameir aser ad sheyitin lamaisa. If you give it, then fine. If you don't give it, then you are forbidden to get benefit. Even this one, he's able to be makel, he's able to be mata the neder. You don't even need a chacham. Why don't you need a chacham? You always need a chacham to be made for the neder. Why? Because he could say, Hareini ki'ilu is kabalti. It's as if I accepted it. So asks the Gemara, you just taught me a case of a conditional get, and you just taught me in the case of the conditional get, being meichel the money does not work. Ask the Gemara, what's the difference in this case? Why in this case being meichel for the neder does work? So now everyone is thinking to themselves, okay, one is a get and one is a neder. That's true. And every time you have a chilik, every time you have a difference between the two cases, you have to explain why that makes a difference. So explains the Gemara, Hachi Ashta, Hasam over there, Litzeure Kamechavein. What's his intent? Why is he doing it? Because he just wants to pain Veloy Tziara. Again, the Hasam and the Hacham is difficult. The Pashtus is the Hasam is going in the case of the Neder. He just wants, he's going in the case of the Gittin. He wants to pain her, and he didn't pain her, Sifra, it's no good. But over here, in the case of the child with the giving the money, Mishamar Vacho, and he decides he doesn't need it, therefore it is good. There are other ways of learning the Hacha and the Hasam. Let's just see if we could pull up Rashi. 1 second. Rashi's a little bit higher up. Rashi says, Misham harvacha sheyitzarich l'tzarich b'noi, that he needs it for his kid. And lamaisa, what's the halacha? That's the halacha over here by the case of the neder. And v'lo and he decided he doesn't need it, and therefore he could be meichel. Another case. How Gavra, there was a guy, he said to his sharecropper, Kule alma, everyone, dalu tlas dalvasa, waters the field 3 times, ve'echli reva, and they consume a quarter of the produce. He made a condition with his aris. Dali arba, I want you to water the field 4 times, v'achal tilsa, and I want you to eat it, only to eat a third. And then what happens? He agrees. And lo and behold, l'saif asa mitra. At the end of the day, the rain comes. The rain comes, so he didn't have to actually water it that extra time. Does he still get the third? Does he still get the extra produce that was part of the condition? Amar Rav Yosef. So Rav Yosef says, no. Halay dala. Lamaisa, you did not water, therefore you don't get. Rabba Amar, no. Halay yitzrich. You don't need to water. Why not? Because the field got watered. So says the Gemara and suggests the Gemara, Lema, shall we say, Rav Yosef Damar Karabanan Bayas, Rabba Damar Krashbag. Just like in our Mishnah, the Rabbanan held it's Dafka the shirt, Dafka the coat and not the cash. So that's going to fit with Rav Yosef over here that Lamaisu was a condition that you didn't fulfill. So it's game over. Whereas Rabba is going to say like Rav Shimon Gamliel. Says the Gemara of Itizbra, you want to make the machlekes Rav Yosef and Rabba into the same machlekes into Rabbanan and Rashbag of the Mishnah. But we hold Hilchs like Avasei de Rabba. We hold over there, we pass like Rabba, that even though you don't water the field, you still get it. Ubaha, and in our case, ein halacha girashbag. We pass like the Rabbanan and now Rishim Gamliel. So the math doesn't add up. As the Gemara, you can't pass like Rabba and the Rabbanan. So what are you going to say? So 4 lines from the Y lines. Ella explains the Gemara Lailam Kirabon. Really, we all like the Rabbanon. Rav Yosef Kirabon. Rav Yosef it's the Rabbanon. So far, so good. The Rabba Amar Lacha, says Rabba, what's the reason why I paskin in the case of the sharecropper that you didn't need to water it? Amar Lacha, Rabba can explain. Anadamri afilu l'Rabban. Really, I concur. I agree with the Rabbanan in general that when it comes to the shirt by the Gittin, you have to give dafka the shirt. Some of the Rabbanan only said their din over there. Over there, what do the Rabbanan want? What does the husband want? He wants to cause his wife agony. But by us, by the artist, by the sharecropper, why does he want him to water it an extra time? It's because he wants to have his field extra water, and he doesn't need it, and therefore he's still going to get it regardless of whether he watered it or not. We're going to stop over here. Pick it up from Tanan Asam the next year. B'siyata Dishmaya.